before we dive into today's episode, if you've been enjoying our podcast, take a moment to rate and review. It may seem like a small thing, but our ratings and reviews make a huge difference in the quality of our show. They help us reach more listeners like you so we can continue bringing you more amazing content. So, if you've found inspiration, learned something new, or just love tuning in every week, please rate the Inspired Intentions podcast 5 stars and leave us a review and even share with a friend. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Now let's get into the show. Inspired Intentions listeners, we have a topic for you this lovely Monday that is all about making something that can sometimes seem inaccessible, daunting, painful, all to make it feel accessible and hopefully fun. I have my co-host,
hi, Alan.
Rachel, back on. Always a pleasure for the two of us to be in here. And you know
agree.
that our listeners are going to get something fun when it's the two of us.
Yes.
And we are here to talk today about I'm going to call it one of Rachel's favorite subjects.
Yes, that's true.
That I would consider you to be an expert on.
That's nice. Thanks, Alan.
That you've been coaching people for years
I
on.
have, yes. And that is running.
Running.
Yes. And I know we've done other running podcasts in the past. We've talked about running technique. We've talked about running shoes.
Mm-hmm.
We have talked about the run streak.
The run streak. I was going to ask you, are you still on your run streak?
You know what? I love that you waited until we were on air just as a little bit of suspense. Of course. Yes. So this November 11th will be 5 years. 5 years of running a minimum of 1 mile every single day, not skipping days, even when I probably should have skipped a day or two, but it's fine. It's
Still
all about,
doing it.
Yeah, still doing it.
How many days did you say?
Today was 1,654.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Can I tell you that I know for a fact that podcast, which all of you should go back and listen to, inspired at least one person to also do a streak, and that was not me.
Yeah.
It was a guest, Susan. So, Susan, I'm sure you're going to listen to this one. Shout out to you for
Shout out to you, Susan.
doing a walking streak.
Yeah.
And every single day, last time I talked to her, it had been, I want to say like 200 something odd days.
That's amazing.
Yeah, pretty sweet.
That is a lot.
It's a lot. And she said the same thing. It's not every day I want to do it,
Yeah.
but I get up and I do it.
Yeah.
And it was walk for just 30 minutes.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just has to be something that's small enough and attainable enough that you can do it even when you don't feel like doing it.
Yeah, which can be running for folks sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah. Alan, I know you're the host, but I just want to say this episode is really important to me because I have met throughout my life people who have said, oh, that's really great that you run, but I am not a runner.
Mm-hmm.
I could never do that. And the message for today, listeners, I want you to know if you have a body, you can run in it. And it doesn't have to be fast. It doesn't have to be far. But I really want to make sure that I communicate that the joy of running is yours. It could be yours. It could be for everybody.
Beautifully said. I would like to start with, when did you start running?
I went to a picnic at my aunt and uncle's JCC in Rochester, New York. And I was 6 or 7 years old, and there were a lot of, kids' activities. And my mom tells the story that, all of a sudden she's like, "Where's Rachel?" And then she looked over, and I was sprinting in a race in the middle of this picnic. And I won the race for my age group, which was 6 to 8. I won $3 in an envelope, which I still actually have that envelope.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
You spent the $3 though.
Yeah, I did. But, I think that was it was joyful, and it was joyful. I mean, it was joyful for all of us, I think, when we were kids to just run across the yard or run across grass and just feel just the joy of moving and moving fast. And so that's when I started, when I got old enough to be on sports teams. When I could, all 3 seasons I ran. So cross country, indoor track when my school district had it, and then outdoor track.
I had never heard that story before. That's awesome.
It was fun.
And so from there, it just was ingrained a part of your life and you began to educate yourself
Yeah.
on the technique and
Yeah.
form.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about this, especially when we talk about run technique on our earlier podcast. But I ran all through the end of high school, and then when I got to college, I ran only to relieve stress and fill my time in between classes and all of the other activities that I was doing. And like all of us, I started running more and more, especially as I started working after college, and decided that I wanted to run a marathon. And I worked up to it. And when I started training for the marathon, I found a training plan, and there was beginner, intermediate, advanced, and of course I picked the advanced. And it was way too much for my body when I was not using good run technique. And 2 weeks before what was supposed to be my first marathon, I ended up with a stress fracture in my pelvis. And not only did I not run that race, I was on crutches for 3 months. And that just started my journey of, first for myself and then for other people, figuring out, how is it that you can run in a way that's sustainable, that you
Mm,
can do it for as much as your life that you want to do it for? Because I think whether it's running or something else that we love, when it's almost taken away from you, you
yeah.
realize how important it is in your life, and want to do everything that you can do to preserve it. So, I found what worked for me, and then wanted to tell as many people as possible about, hey, this is what you should be doing, and this is how you should be thinking about things. And it's worked for a lot of people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I want to start at, above and beyond your history is it can work for a lot of people, but
hmm
where should somebody get started? Imagine there's someone that hasn't been a runner really ever and they're run curious.
Yeah.
Where would
Yeah.
you start them off at?
Yeah, my favorite thing, as far as running goes, is start with a walk run plan. So it can be something as simple as, I want to run at some point, I want to be able to do a mile.
Mm-hmm.
So you measure out the mile, and I would run for 30 seconds and then walk for 2 minutes, and then run for 30 seconds and walk for 2 minutes, and just cover the distance of that mile. Because whether you're running, no matter how fast you're running, or walking, you're still covering the distance. And so your body is getting used to, of course, being on your feet, moving whatever distance you want to run, and then slowly start to increase the amount of time that you're running and decrease the amount of time that you're walking. So maybe week 1, I'm doing 30 seconds of run, 2 minutes of walking. Week 2, maybe I bump that up to 45 seconds of running and a minute and a half of walking. Um, as you do that, I would recommend, if you're increasing any kind of distance that you're running, increase for no more than 3 weeks in a row. And then on that fourth week, really scale things back. Give your body a break. And I would not increase more than 10% over the course of a week. So just be really gentle, really pay attention to your body. And, the muscles that are hurting are going to tell you what is good or could use improvement about your run technique. And we can talk about that too.
I guess what you're describing is kind of how you would set up an initial like running plan,
Yes.
kind of interval style.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
And once somebody kind of has that plan and they've initiated it, they're starting to take those steps towards further, longer.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you notice in folks that starts to happen around that time?
I think it really depends on, and this would be another a good step for our listeners. I think it depends on what your goals are. So if your goal is, you know what, I want to start running because eventually I want to run a marathon, that's amazing. And so you're going to be training a lot differently than someone who's like, I want to run because I want to be able to join a local run club and meet people, or I want to be able to run across the yard with my grandchildren at the JCC picnic. So I think it really depends what it is that you want out of running. I think it's really easy. I mean, it was a trap that I fell into of, I'm a runner, so I have to run races. I have to run these very specific races because they're prestigious races, and I have to run in a really specific time. And it started to remove the joy of running, just because of all of the pressure that I put on myself, which I know is something that all of us do. And so that's why, for me, the run streak has just been so much more fulfilling, because I'm doing what I love to do, but it's mine. It's just for me. I'm not having to prove anything. Not that anybody was watching my run times, but it's public. Being in a race is very public, and I just, for me, the privacy of that goal and the consistency of the goal has just been much more joyful. So figuring out for yourself, what is it that I want out of this activity, and just make your plans and your priorities around that.
So not that we love this word, but that's kind of what is keeping you motivated.
I think, what's keeping me motivated in this run streak? That's a good question, because at this point, Alan, I'm stubborn. Because if I miss a day, I go back to 0. And again, the only person keeping track of this is me. So at this point, it's me being stubborn.
Gotcha.
I do enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot more when the weather is nice. And, I'm not trying to squeeze it in the middle of 500 other things. I do find a lot of joy in the community that I found. So
cool.
Susan did let me know about her run streak, and I love that. And I have had friends who've started run streaks who are still on their run streak. My brother did, I know I mentioned this before, but he did a year of 40 burpees a day, which was insane. But just, helping other people and other people helping me to stay consistent I love the community aspect of that too.
What about for somebody that's new, like this getting started person we're talking about? What about when their motivation is waving, as it will?
Yeah. I think that's a really good question. I think setting a goal, no matter what that goal is, of course, can be something that's really powerful. Whether it's, again, running a race, or being able to, run a mile in a certain amount of time, or cover a distance. A lot of folks get into trail running because it can be gentler on your body. You cannot run very fast on the trails. The trail running community is a really tight community of people, and it's a really easy way to make new friends. And then also, don't discount the power of an accountability buddy. So someone either that you're running with, or that you're checking in with. When I was in my more serious marathon training phase, I had 2 very, very good run training buddies, and we would do the early, long, grueling runs together. We would meet at 5 a.m. in the winter, and it was miserable, and it would have been way worse if I didn't have those people that I knew were waiting for me, and who are waiting to provide support to each other.
Gotcha.
Community.
That's good advice. Same thing applied across a different avenue. That's exactly what I need when it comes to lifting.
Yeah.
Strength training.
Yes.
I need that for sure.
Yeah. You don't want to let the other person down.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I want to dip into what I would consider to be my favorite part of this kind of topic, which is gear. And I'm a gear junkie. What do people need to buy to be a runner? Like, can you just wear any shoes? Do you need all this fancy stuff that you see in marketing campaigns? What are your suggestions around what to buy?
I feel like you and I are the perfect people to have this conversation, because I am a little bit gear adverse, and I know you love your gear. So let's just meet in the middle.
Okay.
Okay, let's start with the question that I get all the time, which is what shoes should I buy? And again, we have a whole episode on choosing shoes. But in general, what you want from your running shoes is shoes that are going to give you a little bit of support and cushioning and not too much so that you are still able to feel what it feels like when your feet hit the ground. Because if your shoes have too much cushioning, you lose your connection with the ground, and that can be where injuries can happen. Because if you can't feel, for example, hey, it hurts when I hit the ground with my heel first, then you may be continuing that pattern, which means that over time, that is where you are more likely to get injured. Um, I'm going to also say something that I think surprises a lot of people, and this is not the first time that I've said it, but your running shoes are not going to fix your run technique. I know that that's how they're marketed. It is a $2 billion shoe industry that relies on marketing to say, hey, buy these shoes and then you won't overpronate. Overpronation is fixed by fixing your run technique, and shoes are not going to do it. So I would not, especially if you're starting out, I would not do anything minimal. That is something that I would avoid. So shoes that provide support and cushioning and not too much. Um, I do love socks. I love, I would not do cotton socks. A lot of times, if you have a blister, it's not caused by your shoe, it's caused by your sock. So you want socks that are going to wick moisture away, that aren't cotton. You can always buy specific run socks. I don't have a brand that I prefer, but I will tell you, I do prefer socks that squeeze my arch. Just that's a personal preference.
Yeah.
Um, there's this is not an ad, but I know a lot of people struggle with how do I carry my phone and my keys. I do not like anything jingling or moving around while I'm running. It makes me feel a little bit nauseous. There's something called a flip belt that lies flat against your body, and you can slide your phone in it. It has a little hook where you can connect your keys. That's something that's been really helpful for me. Hat when it's sunny, with a brim, of course, and hat to keep your ears warm if you're running in the winter, and comfortable clothing, and probably some kind of watch that's going to be able to measure distance and your pace if you care about it. What gear did you want to know about?
Do you keep any supplements or anything on you, like gels or?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you do not need any kind of supplements unless you're running more than 90 minutes or 2 hours. So if you're running under that, the food that you've eaten before is going to be enough to fuel you. If you are marathon training, and we can go into nutrition a little bit, if you are marathon training or planning on running a race that's going to take, half marathon even, anywhere longer than 90 minutes to 2 hours, you should be experimenting with those gels and supplements through the entire course of your training, because there is nothing that will impact your digestive system more than a gel that you haven't tried when you're running. And same thing with food. So the meal that you eat before your run, especially if it's a run that's going to take you longer than, like I said, 90 minutes, make sure that you're getting all 3 macronutrients: protein, fat, and carbs. Carbs are going to burn off really quickly. The more protein and fats you have in your body, the longer that energy is going to be sustained. And of course, everybody's different. So you may feel like, you know what, I actually, when I run for an hour, I feel like I need to take a gel. I would say start with the meal that you eat before. But if you feel like you need to do that, the rule with gels and supplements is if you feel like you need it, it's already too late. So make sure you're eating that, 30 to 40 minutes before when you might need it. So if we're going back to our 90 minutes rule, and say you're going to be running for 2 or 3 hours, you want to take your first gel probably 40 minutes into the race.
Gotcha.
Stay ahead.
I wanted to back up to the shoe deal real quick. When you were talking about too much cushion, in the hiking world, they call that the stack height.
Oh,
So how it's the visual for me is like how much foam or sole is stacked up between
sure.
your foot and the ground, not which can be sometimes commonly mistaken for the drop
Yep.
of the shoe.
Yeah.
So what you were saying there is too much of a stack is bad.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Is there a number that you know of that's like because usually it's millimeters, like this much is too much for.
There's a brand I don't like, which I'm not going to say on the air. There's one specific brand that's it's marketed as being very, very, very cushiony.
Okay.
For walking around, for going for long walks, it's fine. But for running, where you're asking your body to support your entire body weight one leg at a time, where injuries are much more likely to happen, not being able to feel your connection to the ground is going to be detrimental. I've worked with maybe only one runner who I was like, okay, fine, go ahead, wear those shoes. She had a broken toe and was running on a broken toe, and really truly needed all of that cushioning. And she was just wearing those shoes for a period of time.
Gotcha.
That's what I would say.
So not an exact number for anybody.
No,
but
not
yeah.
an exact number, but anything, I would say, and a lot of shoe lines now have like this ultra cushion. I would say anything that's like ultra cushion, just avoid that one.
And it could be the opposite too. Like you could have too little.
Yeah, that's those minimalist shoes. I mean, those were all the rage like 10 years ago. You saw the Vibram 5-finger glove, weird.
So weird.
But I worked with an athlete who broke 2 bones in his foot because he was wearing those shoes and stepped on a rock.
Oh, wow.
So those are meant to those shoes, I would say, are more of a tool when you're working on your run technique and you really want to say, I want to pull my feet off the ground faster. I know I'm not pulling them fast enough. Being able to feel exactly when you hit the ground is a really powerful tool. I would use those minimalist shoes just, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week. Just feel that connection with the ground every time you hit, and then put on your regular running shoes.
Gotcha. For anyone that's curious, the episode that we mentioned earlier is episode 128, How to Protect Your Feet by Making Smart Footwear Choices.
Thanks, Alan.
I believe you were on there,
Yep.
and just talking all about proper footwear choices and some of the stuff that we're talking about. So I want to transition from this idea of gear, because we've talked a decent bit about like what something feels like in your body, whether that be feet or this or that, and some injury history with yourself and some others. How can somebody monitor their body for something like that to help them prevent it?
My favorite.
So your favorite?
It's like my sub-favorite topic.
Okay.
In my favorite topic.
It's not gear, but...
No. Okay. So here, first of all, I'm not a doctor, obviously. So, and I should have said this at the beginning, but if you are starting a run program for the first time, it is a good idea to talk to your doctor. Also, if you feel something that hurts while you're running, that's incredibly powerful information. Use that as information. Don't use that as a sign that you need to stop running. So, for example, if your hamstrings are sore at the end of a run, that means you're doing it right. That means that you're using your hamstrings to pull your feet off the ground, and those are the muscles that you want to be using. So, good job for you. If your lower back hurts when you're running, what you're likely doing is not locking down your core in front, and you're kind of swinging your shoulders side to side. So a couple things to fix that. Strength work on your core, of course. And when you're running, thinking about pulling your rib cage down, that will help lock down your core. If your calves hurt, what you're likely doing is running on your toes. we talk all the time about heel striking and how it is bad. And yes, heel striking is bad, but heel striking is only bad when that's where you land. You should be landing on the ball of your feet, so right underneath your toes, that fleshy part of your foot, and your heel has to touch down with every step, but heel touches last. If you're not touching your heel down, it means you're running more on your toes and your calf is not getting released. And so that's why you have calf pain. Shin pain is likely that you are running with a flexed foot, probably heel striking. And any other pains that you have?
No, I was going to ask about calf pain. That's interesting. Achilles?
Yeah, that's if you have Achilles pain, and that's something that especially men approaching 40 or over 40, or especially there are some specific drugs that can cause some weakening in your Achilles. So that's something that you want to treat really carefully. Mobility, of course, can help with Achilles. And my favorite one to do is if you put the back of your ankle on a foam roller and then put your other leg on top of the leg that's on the foam roller, and then just on that bottom leg, just kind of move your ankle back and forth. That's really going to get up in there. Making sure that you're stretching your calves, both with a bent leg and a straight leg, to get deep inside that calf muscle. That's going to help just keep everything in your lower leg nice and relaxed and mobile.
Working up the leg, anything with hip or knee?
Hip or knee is likely some kind of injury that started in the way that you landed, because hip or knee pain is typically landing, likely a heel strike, and the weight of your body, the impact of the body, it can be 2 to 3 times your weight that goes into the heel and then up into the knee and into the hip. And so just, the fix for that is pulling your feet off the ground faster. And we, of course, talk about that in our Run Technique podcast as well. But thinking about every time you feel your foot touch the ground, pulling it off with your hamstrings, that's going to keep your landing underneath your hips. It's going to keep you in alignment, and that is going to be much less likely for injuries to happen.
You could reference a pull video that we've worked on with Rachel on Skyterrahome.com for that.
Yes.
What about, you mentioned kind of stretching the calves out. What is stretching in general a good idea before or after a run? Is that a myth that it helps prevent injury? What are your feelings on that?
Stretching, warming up, cooling down, yes, to all of those. I would say, ideally, you run a little bit and then your muscles are warm and then you stretch. But that is just general. And of course, every body is different. I think mobility is best done after a run. But honestly, stretching, mobility are best done whenever you are most likely to do them. So if you know what, when I'm done with a run, I am done. Don't want to do anything else, then do it at the beginning. It's better to do it when it's convenient versus not do it at all.
What about cross training and strengthening the muscle groups around the things that could hurt? Strengthening your hamstrings so they can pull better.
Yes.
Like what?
Okay, Alan, this is one of my other favorite subtopics of this favorite topic. It is so, so important when you're running that you have a strong body, because the longer that you can hold your body in a good position over the course of your running, the better off you're going to be. And so, of course, full body strength training is always important, not just for running, but just for life in general. But in particular, core, because strengthening not only your core in the front, but also your glutes in the back are going to help you keep your pelvis in a neutral position, which is going to help your body stay in alignment, which is going to help you avoid injury. So core, super important. Hamstrings, of course, so that you have the strength to pull your feet off the ground over and over. And then the other one that I would say, which some people are surprised by, is your lats. Because if you can pull your shoulder blades down towards your back pockets while you're running, and that's what you use your lats to do, you're going to, first of all, help keep your shoulders in alignment. So your shoulders are going to stay over your hips versus rolling forward. And you're going to make sure that your body is in a position to get as much oxygen as possible so that you don't feel more winded than you actually are.
That makes sense. Do you have any kind of drills that help with that?
You know what, Alan?
I actually know the answer to this one already. That's why I asked.
You should check out Skyterra at home, everybody.
Yeah.
We have a video. It's an excellent drill. I think we actually joke in the beginning that it's the cheapest treadmill in the world because you could pay $5 for the band that we use and build yourself a really nice treadmill. And you can also practice this run technique. So I would say check out our skyterraathome.com.
Gotcha. Yep. Definitely. It's a good video. I think monitoring the body is important, knowing what to buy, where to get started for folks. Any other tips that you have for folks that are really looking to get into running?
I have 2 tips. The first is, I think, tracking your running, however you choose to do it, can be a really powerful tool. Not as a way to keep yourself on track, but as a way to feel proud of what you've accomplished. So I have a notebook where I write down my run streak day and how far I ran and what number it was. And I also use that notebook. Sometimes I'll run with somebody or I'll be on the phone with somebody while I'm running, and I write that person's name in there as well. Just it's more about, I can look back and, oh my gosh, I was talking to this person when I ran here. And so whether you do that in a notebook or you use an app like Strava, I think it can be really powerful to just say like, oh my gosh, look at everything that I've accomplished. And then the second piece of advice is, maybe about a year ago, I had a friend who was just getting into running, and I went for his first run with him. And we're running, and he's like, I feel terrible. And I said to him something that I feel like everybody needs to hear, and that is, when you start running, when you start running and immediately you're out of breath. You're like, this is terrible. So it takes your body, and it's going to be different for everybody, but it takes your body a good 3 to 4 minutes to get warmed up. So what's happening in the beginning when you feel immediately out of breath is that your muscular system is not yet synced up with your cardiovascular system. And your body's kind of like, what's going on? And that's why that's why you see people, even when they're going to run a marathon, you see people warming up before a race because you want your body to get synced. And those first 3 to 4 minutes can you feel like you're out of shape. You feel like, why does anybody do this?
Yeah.
Stick with it. Get past those first 3 to 4 minutes, and I promise you'll feel so much better.
It's good tips.
Thanks, Alan.
For any listener that's listened this far, they're obviously curious. How far should somebody go for their first run? Should they do 3 miles? Does that feel like too much?
That feels like too much.
If they did a mile, is that not enough? I feel like that's going to be something that's rolling around in folks' heads.
Okay.
Somebody that's not a runner, they're like, well, if I don't go this far, I'm not even doing anything.
So if you have never run before ever, the most important thing that you can do today is just do it. Like, it was funny, Alan, when we were planning out this podcast of, how to become a runner, literally what I said was like, well, just do it. So I think the most important thing, I don't think it has to do with distance. I think it has to do with, you know what, I'm going to do this. Because as soon as you step outside, as soon as you take 2, 3, 5, 10 steps, you've become a runner. 1 minute ago, you were not a runner because you had never run before. And 1 minute later, literally, you have become a runner. And so I think it's not about covering any specific distance. I think the most difficult thing is just put on your sneakers and go. Like you don't need anything special. You just need your body and maybe just a memory of being a kid and being really joyful and running across the lawn and how great that felt.
Yeah. Good advice.
Thanks, Alan.
Well, this has been enlightening, to say the least. I
Thank
can
you.
hear your passion behind this and your expertise, and I hope
Thank
that
you.
the listeners that come all the way through this thing and have never run before take that first stride.
I hope so too. Thanks so much, Alan.
Thanks, Rachel.
Bye.
Bye.
The Inspired Intentions podcast is a production of Skyterra Wellness Retreat. Special thanks to our executive producer, Alan Broyhill. Send us your questions and comments to inspiredintentions@skyterrawellness.com. Subscribe on iTunes and everywhere podcasts can be found. If someone you know might benefit from this podcast, share Inspired Intentions with them and give us a 5-star rating. Join us next week as we cut through the unrealistic noise on diets and fitness and show you how healthy living fits seamlessly into your already busy life. Thanks for listening.